Hi, this is Corey Johnston, and today's lesson is going to take place in the 8th chapter in the book of Proverbs. This is the longest single proverb as measured by number of verses, 36. That being said, we're going to eliminate the preamble altogether rather than revealing you the context in advance. We'd rather have the context reveal itself in the reading and commenting thereon. So we're just going to hop right to it. The opening verse reads, Does not wisdom call, and understanding lift up her voice? So we have two figures whose voices are being expressed right now in this verse. Wisdom and understanding, these are both measures of intelligence, but understanding is the lesser in relation to wisdom. It's the lesser building block. Now, without understanding, you cannot have wisdom, but wisdom is the more advanced level of intelligence. And Solomon earlier personifies her in female form in the first chapter, 20th verse, but here it's gender neutral, and as we will read, wisdom will proceed to define itself. It will give us the fullest list of what wisdom is and what wisdom isn't, and then it will describe its role in creation. So that's just the heads up we have to look forward to. On the top of the heights along the way, between the paths, she has taken her stand. So wisdom is not strictly speaking a person, but Solomon is relying on what are known as anthropomorphisms. These are the humanized terms used to apply to divinity, but that's because we have no reference point for wisdom, which is an invisible entity. So he's describing her in this, or it, whatever you want to interpret it as, but standing on a path which wisdom lights the way of, wisdom designs the path which one can travel on the road to wisdom, life lived with wisdom, and she is standing there and she's on top of the heights while she is. Beside the gates leading to the city, at the entrances, she shouts, O men, I call to you, and my voice to the sons of man. You simple ones, understand insight, and you fools, be of an understanding heart. So she's not only talking, but she's talking loudly and publicly at the very center of the city. The very entrance, she's there, she's shouting, and her voice, she makes clear, is for humans, so all in earshot who hear her are duty-bound to comply and obey, and she's singling out simple people, simpletons, who lack insight, so they cannot have wisdom. At best, they can maybe have understanding in rare cases, and fools are people blinded by the waywardness of their own hearts, which are corrupt, and so intellectual failure is very much a moral failure, at least in the exalted standards of Solomon, because he does elevate wisdom on such a high pedestal. We have to understand that he's speaking of the omniscience of Yahweh and Elohim throughout the proverb. Listen, for I speak noble words, and the opening of my lips is about straightness. So not only does she speak, but what she speaks is very much worth listening to. These are self-described noble words. So there's value in them, and there is dignity in her words, in her ways, in her will, in her path. And that path is one of straightness. Now, in the New Testament, we read that narrow is the path which leads to salvation, but broad is the way to death and destruction, somewhere in the 7th chapter of Matthew. But we're just going to keep reading. But the straightness, now wisdom, the way is straight because there's really, it's the balance between the extremities we find ourselves in life, and that's always a delicate path for us to strategize and pursue. For my mouth speaks truth, and wickedness is an abomination to my lips. So there's a purity about what comes out of her mouth. It is always truth. There's nothing wicked in truth or anything that she has to say. Her very mouth would reject and omit the mere presence of wickedness. So words can be wicked. They can be wise. They can be anything that we are. So the words that belong to us, momentarily at least, define us as a person. All the words of my mouth are in righteousness, none of them twisted or crooked. So wholesale, complete righteousness, wisdom. There is nothing that is not righteous that is not wise, and conversely, there is nothing wise that is not righteous. So it's literally incapable of expressing or emitting any sentiments of unrighteousness or unjustness or anything corrupt or wayward or deviant or crooked. All of them plain to him who understands, and straight to those who find knowledge. So it's going to make sense if you are of an understanding mind and of an understanding heart. Everything she says, everything she is, will make sense to you. This is wisdom, who she is. And and knowledge and straightness are going to be some of the extra gifts she has to offer. Accept my discipline, and not silver, and knowledge rather than choice gold. So the natural man would accept silver and gold above what she has to offer. The natural man is a carnal creature who is enticed and allured by wealth, and discipline is not so sexy because that involves pain on our behalves, and no one enjoys going disciplined while they're being disciplined, but it is a good long-term investment without which we can never grow or be corrected or repent or anything else. It has educational and spiritually nutritional value. And knowledge doesn't entice too many people because most people don't even have the mind for it or the knowledge that such a life or such a life choice is actually one worth pursuing. For wisdom is better than rubies, and all delights are not comparable to her. This, the fourth proverb, I did one recently on that, establishes the supremacy of wisdom, and that sort of bleeds over into this verse, where this supreme value of wisdom is worth more than any earthly treasure. We've already seen silver, gold, now we read of rubies, and all her delights are not comparable to her, so there's nothing that the world can offer that can compare to what wisdom has to offer. I, wisdom, have dwelt with insight, and I find knowledge, foresight. So insight is the ability to analyze things as they are, but foresight is to have advanced anticipation of things, what they will be. This is the gift. Every prophet has the gift of foresight, every authentic one. And insight is more the process of illumination. So the Spirit who inspired the prophets and gave them prophetic foresight also inspires the readers of their works with the ministry of illumination, which enables us to make sense of it and to personalize it and to amplify it in our own lives. The fear of Yahweh is to hate evil. I have hated pride and arrogance and the evil ways and the perverse mouth. So fear of Yahweh is elsewhere identified as the wellspring of wisdom, I believe in the ninth chapter, 10th verse, also the 1st and 7th, and that is scattered throughout here. But here we find what it is. It is something, it expounds on the negative direction of it. So it also hates and rejects and evil because he hates and rejects evil. We read of this in places such as Psalm 97:10. And arrogance is arrogance is pride without humility. It's really pride to the next level. So pride and arrogance is what compelled what prompted Lucifer's rebellion was pride. What compelled it was arrogance. And these are things he hates, and these are things we must help ourselves hate without hating those who indulge and partake in such sins. We are always trying to seek to win the lost over to our cause. And perverse mouth, that just means of foul conversational habits. Counsel is mine, and sound wisdom. I am understanding. Mightiness is mine. So in addition to being totally intelligent, it is also completely strong. So it's both omniscient and omnipotent, and that's because it belongs to divinity. This is an wisdom is deified in this proverb, but it does very much belong to Elohim, and that is something he is, but it is not all that he is. But he is it 100%, really, like no one else can even pretend to be. By me kings reign, and rulers make righteous decrees. So his providential sovereignty is such that every king on earth owes his throne to his grace. Now, the ones who acknowledge him will be inclined to pass righteous decrees, as Solomon was, at least at this point in his life. This was the middle years of his life. By me princes rule, and nobles, all the judges of the earth. So from top to bottom, the whole judicial system would have been stewards, at least, of his eternal and heavenly throne of judgment. I love those who love me, and those who earnestly seek me and find me. So the love is unconditional, but the love is going to be realized and appreciated and reciprocated when we actively seek it out. So that the motivation to seek wisdom and divinity is an act of love. It is longing for the very best, and the best blessings conceivable can come from conceiving who the Almighty is. Riches and esteem are with me, enduring wealth and righteousness. Now, this is not just wealth, but it's enduring wealth. So wealth of the earth will perish, corrode, moth will eat, corruption will decay will corrupt, and every possible thing that can something will go wrong eventually, but the wealth of wisdom, the treasures of wisdom have an eternal echo. So if we gain a hold of them in the life in which we now live, our mortal life, it will have an eternal echo, which will impact the rest of our existence, and significantly so. My fruit is better than gold and fine gold, and my increase than choice silver. So for the second time in the same proverb, Solomon establishes the dominance or preeminence of wisdom. Its fruit is superior to fine gold, and to build upon it to gain more of what she has to offer is superior to owning silver. So once more, there is no earthly treasure that can compare adequately to wisdom and divinity. I walk in the way of righteousness, in the midst of the path of justice. So her way and her walk is always willed with the wisdom that belongs to divinity. That is our path that we trudge on forward ahead. Our path is her path. And when we submit to wisdom or divinity, which are one and the same, as long as we do the latter, this will be our path too. To bestow substance on those who love me, and to fill their treasuries. So the most of what she can offer, the most of what she has to offer, can only come from those who genuinely love her and seek more of her out of the great love that we want to express, and that we're aware of, that comes from her, and we want to give something back to her. And I was anointed, Yahweh So he's able to give us not only life, but abundant life. So everything he has to give, he gives generously and abundantly to those who walk in his ways. Yahweh possessed me, the beginning of his way, as the first of his works of old. So wisdom was foundation to anything in the creative order. It began with an idea which was actualized by his power. So that's where the overplay of omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipotence comes in with the creative process and the foundation of the earth. So before he said, "Let there be light," or anything else, before he intended to bring anything into existence, he had a wise plan which prompted and preempted the execution of that plan. I was anointed ages ago at the first, before the earth ever was. So before the foundation of the earth, wisdom was there. Wisdom is a part of who Elohim is, and because all of his essence are not only his, but eternally so, he will always be wise and beyond measure and beyond that which we can fathom. And his preeminence is owed to the priority. So he was logically, or he or she, divinity or wisdom, respectively, was logically prior to the earth or any planet in the heavens. When there were no depths, I was brought forth. When there was no springs, heavy with water. So this takes us all the way back to the first chapter of Genesis. In the second verse, we read that there was a formless void, and the Spirit hovered over it. And then on one of the later days, after creating light and the heavens, and then going down to the earth, he filled. It was originally all water, and then he added land. So the world in which we now inhabit was originally, at least in its foundational stage, all water. Before mountains were sunk, before the hills, I was brought forth. So this reminds us of this psalm, the 90th Psalm. Mountains would have been a symbol of eternality to a lot of ancient Oriental peoples, and Moses uses the figure to liken or to establish the foundation for the superior wisdom and age of Yahweh, the one to whom he offers the psalm. Before he had made the earth and the field, of the first dust of the world. So he's just going through the laundry list of that which we read of in the first chapter of creation. But before any of this happened, wisdom was always existing in the pre-existence of Elohim. When he prepared the heavens, I was there. When he decreed a vault on the face of the deep. So the heavens really demand a far greater commitment of his omnipotence and an omniscience than this mere blue speck of a dust in all the cosmos and in all creation. But that's just who he is. He is able to do it, and he did it as an expression of who he is and what he can do. When he established the clouds above, when he had made the fountains of the deep strong, when he gave the sea its limit, so that the waters could not transgress his commands, when he decreed the foundation of the earth. So remember, the world was originally all water until he established limits, which he did by imposing land on the surface, which rose above the water. And it's there by design, and it's there for a purpose, and the wisdom was very much influencing that decision. Then I was beside him, a skilled workman, a delight day by day, rejoicing before him all the time. So this is a real reason to be rejoicing. Being in the creative process with wisdom would have been a sight to behold, and expression of praises would have been on the tongue for anyone who experienced it. Rejoicing in the world, his earth, and my delights were with the sons of men. So the prize item of creation is humanity itself. Everything is created good. We read of in Genesis 1:31. But the greatest pride was the thing which incidentally, or the people which incidentally brought the cosmic disequilibrium in the universe, and creation now groans for redemption from the sin which was sent by the cosmic wave, which was planted by Adam and passed down in the torch and voluminously throughout human history. And now listen to me, you children, for blessed are they who keep my ways. So there are blessings for those who listen. There are blessings for those who obey. There are blessings for those who seek out the wisdom and act on it. So everything she has to offer, everything she can do is a blessing, but it will take wisdom on our behalf to realize what wisdom, in capital letter form, that is divinity. Listen to discipline and become wise, and do not refuse it. So even though discipline is never pleasant to experience, it is always transformative in the future. So there is benefit and value to listening to her and becoming wise, becoming more like her, and not refusing it is something we it's the wise thing to do. So from contemplating wisdom, we will reflect the wisdom that he radiates. Blessed is the man who listens to me, watching daily at my gates, waiting at the post of my doors. So there's a blessing for those who are attentive and mindful and courteous and deferential to wisdom, so much so that they wait on it. Their existence, the significance of it, cannot come without it, so we treat it accordingly. For whoever finds me shall find life, and have obtained grace from Yahweh. So life, wisdom, the way of wisdom can add years to our life and life to our years. So there's a qualitative as well as quantitative expansion to embracing wisdom, and the path which is outlined in the Mosaic Covenant, at least for its immediate audience, would have been one that led to health and prosperity, not always necessarily financial, but certainly spiritual. And grace is the greatest gift we can have. And even though we can exercise ourselves to the bones about developing our capacities for wisdom, it is at the end of the day and from start to finish wholly an act of grace, because the wisdom loved us before we loved it. John 15:16. But he who sins against me injures himself. All who hate me love death. Now, we live in a death-denying culture. We don't think about death, but the person who is living in sin is definitely not thinking about, when's this all going to end, where am I going to be, and this is the way I'm living right now, the way I should be living, and will it impact the way I'll be living for an eternity? These are things which do not cross the skull of the natural man, but through the guidance and the outlines in the written form that Solomon provides, this was a man who had connection and communion to wisdom such as no other human, with the exception of the Messiah, who was fully human in every sense of the term. But besides him, he is our standard for wisdom par excellence. So he has a lot to say here. But that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much. I'm glad you're here. Stay tuned till next time. Bye-bye.